Ken's Jinrai versus Sagat's Tiger Nexus. Which move do you think is currently stronger in this version of Street Fighter 6? For me, Sagat's currently leaps and bounds better, but I would love to see your thoughts. This is a good question, and I was thinking about this, and I made some notes off stream. So before I tell you guys what I think, what do you guys think? Sagat eating a full punish if he guesses wrong makes it much worse. That makes sense. I don't disagree with that. Sagat's is higher risk, higher reward, I suppose. Yeah, I don't think you're wrong about that either. So first thing I want to do is I want to start with the similarities between Ken's Jinrai and Sagat's Tiger Nexus, or Tiger Jinrai, whatever you want to call it. Okay, in case anybody doesn't know, for newer players, Ken has different frame data on all his first hits of Jinrai. So light is -11, medium's -7, and then heavy is the only safe one at -2. So you have to kind of listen to what he's saying to know which version he's using, because his voice lines are different on every single one. He always says like "tuh" on light. He always says "da" or whatever. Teya on medium, and then Jinrai on heavy. Then we have the follow-ups. Alright, so what are Ken's options? He's got a low. He's got an overhead. And he's got this follow-up that's really only used for combos, but it whiffs if you're crouching anyways, which you can be doing most of the time. Doesn't matter which version you do, the light kick follow-up is always -5. From light, if you try to do light Jinrai into light follow-up, you lose to 4 frame attacks. But if you do medium Jinrai into the light follow-up, it becomes a frame trap. Then, if the opponent decides not to push a button and you wait for the second one, this is the one where it gets a little bit tricky. Because now you're -5, but you're outside of jab range. So your opponent can't just mash on jab and get a punish. They have to go for a longer range attack. So let's set this to 2. So Cammy is one of the better standing light kicks in the game. But see this? It's -5, but this is safe. So Ken can kind of push a little bit, and as long as he's getting the spacing right, he can make himself safe. And I think, more than anything else, that's the tricky part about Ken's Jinrai. He can decide to make himself safe, and then if he just decides to go for one, and he doesn't go for the follow-up, and you don't push a button at the right time, you're going to be wrong. So here, if I go into this, you're -7, right? Ken's -7 here. So he does this at a safe spacing, and then you decide to call him out on it, and you push. That gets the punish. But if Ken lets it rip and goes for the follow-up, now you get counter hit. So just him touching you kind of puts you into this weird mix-up where you don't know if you should push a button or if you should just stop and not push and just block and wait for him to finish. Because remember, if he does this, yeah, so you have the spacing where even if your frames are right and this would be a punish, he's spaced safely at a range where he can't do anything, and then you misspace your spacing, you misjudge your spacing, sorry. You go for this, and then he punishes you. So that's the tricky part with this. He can kind of like use space traps to cause hesitation in where you push your buttons and when you push your buttons, and then he can kind of space trap you if he decides to like space properly, if he decides to mix up his options. It becomes really hard to know when you're supposed to push a button against Ken. And I think that's the trickiest part. There's no real clear answer 100% of the time when you're supposed to push a button. The only guaranteed option that you do get is if you're one of those characters lucky enough to have a good 6-frame reversal. You always get a punish on every version except for heavy. Because remember, heavy, -2, he can block here. But if he goes for light pressure and he tries to do a follow-up, doesn't matter which follow-up he does, if he goes for overhead, if he goes for nothing, if he just tries to block, you'll get punished. Light, if he just blocks, you get punished. Doesn't matter what follow-up you go for. If you have a 6-frame reversal, you can always shut down all of his options, usually at any spacing, for most of the characters with good reversals, kind of like Cammy. But if you are unlucky and you don't have a reversal, somebody like, I don't know, Aki, someone like Bison, you know, those kind of characters, it can be really hard to know when you're supposed to button, and you don't get a good, easy, just stop pushing Jinrai, get off of me for 2 bars option. So now let's go over to Sagat, and let me show you kind of how he works against the same character, Cammy, and how things kind of change once we go over to Sagat and what his Tiger Jinrai is like. So his Tiger Jinrai has got some differences between, like, so his works very differently than Ken. So first of all, let's talk about frame data first. All right, -5 on the light, -5 on medium, and then -3 on heavy. Ken was -11, -7, -2. This is 5, 5, and then -3. What are Sagat's follow-ups? He's got overhead, so same as Ken so far. A mid, which is not an overhead, just a mid. And then another mid, which is not an overhead. So he doesn't have a low. So you never need to worry about blocking low against Sagat after he does this. And because he's -5, if he decides to stop, you always get a punish. Now, if he does the heavy one, it's also really obvious because it's 2 hits. So it's not like you have to like listen to sound cues like you do with Ken. You have to actually hear Ken say Jinrai. And if you're playing without sound, you're not going to be reacting to Ken's heavy Jinrai as well as you would with sound. So there's kind of like a, how can I say, for a more casual, less sweaty player, it's a lot harder to kind of counter Ken at a base level. I'm not just doing this for tournament players, I'm talking about everybody in general. But Sagat, it's pretty obvious that even in the heavy version, it's 2 hits. You know he's -3, you don't get a guaranteed punish. But any other version, he's -5, so you do get a guaranteed punish. He can follow up though. So let's say you block 1 hit of either light or medium Tiger Nexus, all right? And you go for your 4 frame. Okay, that'll punish him if he stops. But if he goes for the overhead follow-up, this is a frame trap, and he's going to catch you pushing buttons. Okay, what happens if he goes for that medium one? Not overhead, just a middle attack. Well, if you push a button and he does this, you stop him. Why? Because it whiffs on crouchers. So, if you just mash here, he loses. Then, if he goes for the other mid, his heavy kick follow-up, this one has tons of startup. So that loses to jabs too. So all you gotta do here, really, is just slightly delay your jab. See there? That's a delayed jab. Cammy's delaying her jab just a little tiny bit. Now, she's not getting the punish because the training mode dummy isn't kind of set up to do that, but don't worry, trust me, this would be a punish if you just delay their first jab and then do a second one quickly. Then if you go for the mid, you'll still stuff it, and with that slight delay, you'll still stuff the heavy kick follow-up. So it becomes much easier to know what to do against this, rather than Ken. Now, where things get a little bit tricky is Sagat can slightly delay this to catch your delayed button, but then that'll lose to you pushing buttons fast again. So there's some really clear counterplay right there. It's either you decide to take low risk and push your button late, or you decide to call him out on his option right away for the medium and heavy follow-ups and just say stop pushing. And I said the tricky part about Ken's Jinrai is he can use spacing to kind of mess up your buttons and make it hard for you to know when you're supposed to push and when you're not supposed to push. Now let's look if Sagat can do that. That's tip range. So let's say I go into medium Jinrai here. Medium moves me really, really forward, unlike Ken's Jinrai. It moves Sagat so close that you're never going to be able to space yourself at a spacing where you can make yourself safe even after going for this light follow-up. I'm -5, can't block that. Now, what if you just stop? And you say, okay, well, what about if you just do max range crouching heavy punch into a single hit of Jinrai? Okay, here's one. Unsafe. Unsafe. Okay, what about the light version? This is where things get interesting, because now if you go for the light version, you don't move forward enough to even connect. So you can't even create different spacing options that easily between medium and light because the light just straight up whiffs. So Sagat's kind of got to commit heavy to this. And I think that's the big part of what makes defending against Sagat's Tiger Nexus easier and perhaps less frustrating than Ken's Jinrai, is because for Sagat, if you made the right read, you don't have to do like all this, was I at the right spacing? Do I have like the right, is he going to try to space trap me? Is this really the spacing where I can push a button? No, it's just like, okay, I blocked it. I pushed my 5 frame or my 4 frame if he's close and you whatever. I'm good. I don't have to do all this like math and all this geometry to know whether he's close enough or not because he's always close enough. Also, because all of Sagat's options are mids, this is an overhead, this is a mid, and this is also a mid, you can just perfect parry standing up and you don't have to be worried about the low. So Ken, because he has the low, you can't just perfect parry one way. You have to either perfect parry crouching or perfect parry standing, because they made that change in the Season 3 of Street Fighter 6 with the Elena patch. But for Sagat, you just stand up perfect parry for everything, and as long as your timing was right, you never have to worry about which direction you're guarding, whether crouching or standing. And I think that also makes it much easier. Now, if you do perfect parry too much against both these characters, they'll stop, they'll throw you. They both get really good reward off perfect parry throw mid-screen. So that's another topic altogether. Don't parry too much. But I am saying perfect parrying against Sagat, I do believe, is easier than Ken in general. Does drive reversal work? I'm so glad you asked that, because that's my next point. Okay, so let's talk about drive reversal and drive impact. So whether it's crouching medium punch or standing R punch, doesn't matter. If he does that and you try to DI him, okay, he can do it as long as he doesn't follow up. Here's the medium version. He can follow up. Okay, standing heavy punch into medium. He can follow up. Standing heavy punch into light. He can follow up. The only time you do lose, or sorry, the only time DI does win is if Ken's like autopiloting into the low follow up. Then he can't DI. But if he has 3 bars, he can react with a level 3. Only when he has 3 bars. So DI is not a good option against it. And someone said in chat, what about drive reversal? Like, it can work, but like you're spending 2 bars of drive meter plus the drive meter chip that you're taking. So that's like 2.5 bars just to get him off you. And Ken's pretty happy with that. Standing heavy kick does more than half a bar. So he's happy if you're burning all your meter on this. Also, if he just does this and you do your drive reversal and he stops and he goes something like this, congrats. Now you're in the corner. Now, drive impact is actually much better against somebody like Sagat, but you have to know when you can do drive impact against Sagat. And it's a little bit easier to know, but you have to be aware of the options. So, if Sagat is just kind of like spamming and like not really thinking. So generally here, if you do crouching medium punch, light Nexus into light follow-up, Sagat's done. If he stops, he can react. Okay, that's light. What about medium? Medium, if he stops, he can react. Medium into the light follow-up, he can't react. And then heavy, he can react too. He can also super cancel, but that's not really unique to Ken or Sagat. I mean, everybody can do something kind of unsafe and super cancel on reaction, right? That's not really unique to them. That's more like Street Fighter 6 stuff. Now, the one you really have to watch out for is this. Standing heavy kick, medium Nexus. What a lot of Sagat players will do, they'll drive rush at you into standing medium punch, because that gives them +6. And then they'll do standing heavy kick, because that's a 4-frame frame trap. So if you are Cammy and you try to do like crouching light punch here, he gets this trade, which is really good for him. If you try to do a drive impact here and he goes for the medium Nexus, he has just enough time to recover here. So it's frame trap into reaction. This is where it gets really tricky against Sagat. And this is the one point where it can be kind of scary about what to know how to press. But at that point, if you see him go for the Jinrai and you have a reversal, all you have to do is do your reversal. Because if he does this, he's kind of stuck to committing to something. What do less privileged characters do here? Just block. The only thing I didn't talk about was drive chip. And yes, Sagat does get more drive chip. How much drive chip does he get? Luckily for you guys, I took a picture. It's right here, so just like 60% of drive off of crouching medium punch into Nexus. And then if I pull up Ken, crouching medium punch into Jinrai does like 50%. Don't show the notepad. Don't worry. I know I'm not gonna show the notepad. I got nothing to hide. First of all, second of all, I think I'm a little smarter than that. Which one do I think is more powerful? What do you value? Do you value the reward you get on hit, or do you value stacking your opponent's like mental resources and forcing them to make decisions based on spacing and things like that, to force them to make a bad decision and call them out for it? I think Ken's is way more annoying to deal with and more frustrating being on the defending end of it. I think it really drives you crazy and is like really frustrating. You think, like, what were they thinking when they designed this move? Sagat sucks when you get hit by it, but I think at least when you get hit by it, it's like, oh yeah, I kind of made the wrong choice, and you don't feel kind of as bad against the Ken player. I think against Ken is like you feel like you made the right choice, but you didn't because of spacing, and then you get frustrated and you get kind of like pissed off, and then Ken's like, ah, Ken. But Sagat, you know what the counterplay is. You just chose the wrong rock, paper, scissors option and you lost there. Or you just pushed a little bit too hard and you tried to gamble a little bit too heavy when maybe you shouldn't have. As for which one I think is stronger, I don't know. I think Sagat's is stronger if you're using it properly and you're not just spamming it. I think if you're talking about which one do you want to spam the most and get the most reward, yeah, Ken's Jinrai definitely is like a bit more brain dead, easy to use. I think Ken's is definitely easier. Sagat's is harder to use, but in terms of like overall character strength, if you're using it properly and not just like rolling your face on the controller trying to do Jinrai stuff and like Tiger Nexus stuff all the time, Sagat's is definitely stronger. And he gets tons of reward off of it. His damage off of this shit's crazy. So yeah, I definitely do think that Sagat's Jinrai is stronger, but stronger doesn't mean it doesn't have more weaknesses than Ken's Jinrai. So stronger, but harder to use properly and harder to not blow yourself up. I can't tell you how many matches I've thrown because I tried to go for Tiger Nexus a little bit more than I should have. I don't know. Do you guys agree with me? Disagree with me? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. And what do you think they should do to change any of these moves? If you were to make some changes, what would you do? Let me know. If you did enjoy that video, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons. It helps me make more like this. But anyways, guys, that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.